Greetings. On my last video, I got a request, or a couple of requests, to do a rig rundown on my Komodo setup. Now, I've not done this before because kind of figured, I'm not really a DP, I'm a sound guy. And yes, I have a nice setup, but it's more for experimentation and whatnot. I'm not primary shooter on anything. I use this for various internal stuff or behind the scenes stuff and to just have fun with. But as I said, I did get a couple requests, and then also I have solved how I'm going to mount the focus or the LiDAR for the DJI Focus Pro as well. So I figured if I'm going to do it, now's the time to do it. So let's get started. Now, I'm not going to do a complete, tear it down, rebuild it, because that would take a while and frankly, not that interesting to do that. I am, however, going to take the battery off as well as take off the Jetpack so that you can see this better, and then I'll put them back in a moment. So what do we got here? We have obviously the Komodo itself, and I use a Bebob Coco-Modo adapter to go from gold mount to the camera. So the Bebob, for those that are not familiar, does not connect to the BP pins or the BP port pins. Instead, it connects to the Komodo's DC input. It has two LEMO outputs. It's got a DC in as well, so you could plug the original Komodo's power supply into that. The thing that you have to worry about with that, however, is that it's only good for 3 amps. And so if you've got a couple of, the camera itself can draw north of 2 amps. And then if you got a monitor on here like I do, that can get you over the 3 amps. So I don't really use that except for if I'm going to do like a firmware update on the camera or on the monitor. I'm only turning one of them on and it works fine for that. I'm going to unplug this cable here for a moment. So in the back, I have this Beachtek DXA-PRE for audio. This gives me 2 XLRs with phantom power. They are quality preamps, and I can power it from the rig. You can see you've got controls for it on the front, and then it's plugged in to the audio in on the Komodo. And I use that when I want to just record audio straight into the camera, and I'm not recording separately, because if you're doing something one man, you can't always be doing everything. So below the Komodo is the red expansion IO plate, which I know a lot of people never really liked that plate, but it works for me. It does a couple of things. One, you'll notice it gives you extra height. So it makes the Komodo the height more of like a standard cinema camera, so that when you're using rods in the front, your rods are going to be at proper distance from the lens. And then I am using the breakout back here. So you can see I've got the GPIO, which is connected to a Mutiny run stop button over here on the side. So I have the run stop on the left. And then time code input is coming from time code generator, which is a Betso TCX-2, and it's connected to a small rig cold shoe mount, which is screwed onto the rail, right? So simple BNC cable back to the back of the camera here. The other thing too that the expansion IO plate gives you is it gives you a bunch of mounting points as well on both sides. So you can see I've got things like the Mondo cable tie actually on both sides to help with cable management. And then below that is a Kessler K plate. And this thing does provides a few different solutions. So the first is you can see it provides you with mounts or tight 15 millimeter rods, which I'm using for lens support in the motor here. You can get these cheese plates that you can put on either side. And so I'm using the cheese plates for additional mount points on the side. And then it also has on the bottom an Arca Swift dovetails, so you can mount it to things. And if you're going to put it on a fluid head, you can put an Arca Swift clamp onto the plate for your fluid head, and then it's solid. It also has these little feet, and when you set it on the ground, because they're spread apart, it ends up making it such that gravity, or rather the focal points, the fulcrum points, it doesn't tip over. It gives you a lot more stability than if you were just setting it down straight, especially when you have things like a big heavy lens front. So on the top, I have the red link adapter, which gives you a USB out, which really should have been on the camera itself. And they did fix that with the Komodo X, but whatever. So that, however, because I'm using the KipperTie Revolva for ND filters, and the Revolva cartridge sticks up, the link adapter would bang into the cartridge. So the other thing I have is the RISA from KipperTie that extends the height of the pogo pins on the Komodo so that you can have the link adapter and not have it hit with the cartridge for the Revolva. And then lenses are, you use whatever lens you want, right? In this case, I currently have a LAOWA Proteus 35 millimeter anamorphic on here, which is actually a really pretty nice lens. Connected to the link adapter, I have this SABRENT 5 gig Ethernet adapter, which gives me much more reliable access to the controls for the camera through the RED control app. If you were doing frame IO, you could actually have uploads at a decent speed, assuming your internet was fast enough. This is in a small rig. It's actually their generic clamp for SSDs, which is just attached to the cheese plate of the K plate to hold it in place. So this can come off if I need it to come off. Over here on the right side, I have the handle for the DJI Focus Assist. And in the last video, I had the LiDAR mounted up here in the hot shoe of the Focus Assist. And as you can see, I've now got that mounted above the lens. These rails are 9-inch rails. They're actually, as you can see, a little too long, but that's what I had. So rather, use what you have rather than buying something new just to get slightly shorter, right? So with the DJI Focus, the LiDAR, it has this bracket on it, right? There's 2 screws that hold the bracket to the bottom of this that you can take out. And I've seen some people who have machined their own brackets. I obviously don't have the means to do that, so I'm not doing that. And if you undo the screw that's on the top here that holds it into its cold shoe adapter, all there is a little square hole in there. There's no threads in the adapter bracket itself. So you need to leave that cold shoe adapter on it. And that, this is not actually connected to a cold shoe mount. Instead, what I've done is I've gotten another lens support for 15mm rods. And this has a peg with a 1/4 20 thread on the top. So it screws into the bottom of the cold shoe adapter. You don't get anti-rotation with it, but it's reasonably solid with it all tightened down, so not going to move, right? And so now the LiDAR is out in front over the lens. And I still have room for this ball for a magic arm, because sometimes you want to mount something like, I have a ambisonic, a second order ambisonic mic that sometimes it's like, you want to mount it up here, sort of in front of the camera. So I've got, a magic arm grip down here, an 8-inch extension magic arms, another magic arm grip up here, and then I can have the ambisonic mic up here over the lens. One of the things I got asked about in the comments for the last video was this box here, the Freakshow SDI distribution amplifier. So you can see it's got power in. It's one of these 2 Limos that I'm using here. It takes SDI from the camera. So I've got this short SDI cable that plugs in here with a right angle and then sort of is held in place in the space between the K plate and the expansion IO. And it's also a pretty stiff cable, so it kind of stays in place on its own. And I can connect it up to the Freakshow. And now the Freakshow gives me 2 outputs. One of them is this blue 12G SDI cable that I bring up and connect to the monitor. And I'm not going to fully connect that right now because, again, SDI protocol and whatnot. And then the second output on this, I'll use with like a 25-foot SDI cable to go to a big monitor so that you can see more clearly what you're shooting, or if you're working with a couple other people, they can see, right? Again, I'm not a DP, I'm not a first AC, I don't have a wireless transmitter for SDI, because good ones are not inexpensive, and a 25-foot cable connected to the second output on the Freakshow works just fine. And then the other thing is that the Freakshow also acts as a sacrificial lamb, or that's the theory at any rate. So if, again, if you've got that 25-foot cable going off to an external monitor and you have people who are not following SDI protocol with that external monitor, you don't want to zap the SDI port on the Komodo, right? So with the Freakshow, it's an active device. It's the thing that should get zapped. It's a lot easier to replace that than it is to send the Komodo in to have the SDI port repaired. So if we keep working our way up, on top of the link adapter, I have the bright Tangerine handle kit. I forget if they sell this as a Komodo or just a generic. It's pretty generic though. So you've got this NATO bar that goes on the top, and it also has spots on both sides for quick release for harness if you want. And then the top handle is really just a little NATO clamp here into a thing to hold the handle. The handle can slide forward or back. And you have the grip adjustment here to lock it down. Got another Mondo tie up here to hold the SDI cable. So for the monitor, I have a little wooden camera spirit level up here, which helps. And then the nice thing about the bright Tangerine is it gives you, you can get it with this kit that comes with another clamp for top rails, for 15mm top rails. And so that's what I'm using, obviously, to hold the LiDAR. I have a couple of extension pieces and curves down as well. These are, I forget the different brands. I think these ones are wooden camera, and I think this one's maybe bright Tangerine. I don't remember. This one here has the same sort of semi-ovular shape that the bright Tangerine handle itself has, whereas these are just spherical. So you have a little bit of a ridge here, but in practice, you don't really feel it. The initial extra handle piece I purchased mainly because this, as you can see here, the bottom of my hand is actually extending past the handle itself. And so if you were carrying it like that, it didn't feel super secure, whereas putting the extension on means that your hand is covering everything. And then often when I'm carrying it, I'll actually put one hand in front of the mast, because again, that helps keep it secure. And then the curve down back here is mainly because I wanted a place where I could put the quick release for the DXA-PRE. And that's the newer style Kondor blue quick release. They're really nice. So let me put the battery, or talk about the power. So the first thing that I use is this Core SWX Jetpack Evo. And what this thing is it's a battery on its own, and it allows you to then hot swap other batteries without having to power everything down. So I have the gold mount version because I'm using gold mount. And then I also have on it one of the modular expansion plates. And these are really hard to find now because this thing is, 5-year-old product. And during COVID, they said one of the components they used for the expansion modules basically was discontinued, and they haven't redesigned it. But the expansion module is handy. One, it gives you some additional outs, but the biggest thing it gives you is this 6-pin DC input. And that's the same connector that Red uses on a lot of their other cameras, including now the Komodo X and the V-Raptor and so forth. And this can do, 15 amps, no problem. So connecting external power to this can power the camera, it can power the monitor, it can power everything, can power the motors for your focus system. It's plenty, plenty of power, right? So I will snap this on. And this pretty much I just leave on the camera all the time. I took it off because it meant that we could more easily see the connectors in the back, but I really just leave this on. Also, it's got the battery that's in it is actually field repairable. So when the battery lifetime is done, you don't have to e-waste the whole thing. You can just swap the battery for a new one and be good as new. And I do use this DC input. One of the other videos on my channel, I looked at is about the Audio Root BC1150, which is a battery combiner that takes the smart batteries, which are what I use for my sound gear, and allows you to combine them into, in effect, a block battery. And so I can use my extra smart batteries to power this camera through that DC input. And you'll see that the mod plate actually is at an angle, which is good because then when you put your battery on it, you still have access to all the ports below it. And with it connected, you're not going to be able to see the screen, but it's got a little LCD screen on it. And so let's see if we can see any of the lights. It's kind of bright out here. So you've got the blue light here. And if I take the battery off, that blue light stays on. You're not going to be able to see it with the light out here, but the screen is now blinking red, saying, hey, put a new battery on. And so when your battery's dead, you just swap it out. Gives you 2 minutes of runtime at full load, which was for this thing is 15 amps. So you have plenty of time to swap the battery. Also, if you're using the DC input on it, that also can be the power. So and it also has precedence. So if you have DC in and an external battery on the unit, and you pull the external battery because say your block battery dies, now you're going to automatically be running on this. And then if your external battery dies, you still have a couple of minutes of runtime in the Jetpack Evo itself to get something connected without having the whole rig die on you. And so now that we have power on, I'm going to connect the SDI up, and then I will also connect the monitor. And so we will turn on the Komodo. We will turn on the monitor. Yeah, there, it's booting. The monitor is a Shogun Connect from Atomos. And let's see, if we wrote unlock. Come on. And we can, so now we are 2.1 on the ND filters, and you can actually see something on the Shogun screen. Now, I have the Nitze cage for the Shogun on it, and I didn't bring it with me out here today, but the main reason for this cage is so that I can put their sunscreen on it, because if it's really sunny like it is now, well, yeah, it's hard to see, right? The Connect also has the ability to do both wireless and also Ethernet connectivity. And so the SDI coming out of this, not only is this giving you a 7-inch screen to see what's going on, but you can upload proxies to Frame.io that are much smaller than what you would get out of the camera with the R3D files directly. And that's pretty much about it. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know down below. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks. Cheers.